Someone mentioned being afraid of not having done the homework. This is my class in discipleship using the Sermon on the Mount and a series of spiritual exercises. We were talking about not doing the homework. All of these homework assignments are exercises. And if you don't do the exercise once, you do it a different time. We're about to have a 4-week gap in this class because of other church events that are happening. And that gives people plenty of time to catch up on previous homework assignments they didn't do. I'm reminded of a story about Karl Barth, who is one of the most famous theologians of the 20th century, maybe one of the 5 most famous theologians of all time. And he tells a story on himself how he once stayed up all night long writing his lecture for the next morning, just like a college student. And at about breakfast time, he decided that it was all wrong. So he said, I called in and pretended I was sick, just like a schoolboy. Don't worry about not having done the homework on any particular day. Only worry if you never do it. But if you get to any of these assignments ever, then you're doing them, and that's what counts. These are exercises for the will, for the choice, for the decision. So it doesn't matter how long a time you don't make that decision in, because when you make that decision, you've made it. It exists as a decision that you make from yourself as a spiritual being capable of deciding and choosing and acting in the world. And choice and action are timeless, even if the history in which they appear in the world is in time. The fact of decision and choice and action is forever. So you don't have to worry about when you do the homework. You only have to worry about whether you do it or not do it. Whether it happens sometime or never. Now, we went through a sequence of exercises of increasing difficulty. The first was just to practice saying thank you and to practice meaning it, to practice being careful to mean it whenever we said it. Then we moved up a little bit. We wanted to be a light shining in the world. Jesus says 2 different things in the Sermon on the Mount. One thing he says is, you are the light of the world. He says a candle is put up on the candlestand, a lamp on the lampstand, so it gives light to the whole room. You don't hide it under a bushel. So one of the things that we need to do as Christians is be a light and shine on the good things that people are doing. So stepping up from just saying thank you, now we wanted to find good things that people are doing and point them out and shine a light on them and take trouble to tell someone that they're doing good, they're doing something wonderful, they're doing something they should keep doing, and that we'd love to see other people doing, even maybe telling other people about what they're doing that's so good. This is really not so much different than saying, hey, that new sushi restaurant down south here is better than the one up north we used to go to. You're shining a light on something that's being done well. Now, we'd like to shine lights on things like, saving the hungry and freeing the slaves and stuff like that, but we do this all the time. We shine a light on the good stuff we see. We wanted to do it more consciously as an exercise. So last time, the exercise was the next step up, because Jesus also says, you are the salt of the earth. You make things taste good. You do the things that the light should shine on, so that good things are being done among other people and all around you, and wherever people are gathered that you are, sometimes you do good things. So the assignment I gave you was to do a good deed every week. Now, a good deed takes a little bit of thought and planning. It can be as simple as when the beggars on the street ask you for a dollar or some change so they can get something to eat. Don't give them money, but take them directly to a restaurant and sit them down and feed them. That's a good deed. It's the right size of a good deed for an exercise, for a spiritual exercise. Maybe, eventually, we want to get to the point where we're not just doing an exercise anymore, we're changing the world. We're the ones managing and setting up and supporting a food pantry, or a soup kitchen, or something. But that's the point at which you're actually performing. These are spiritual exercises designed to gain the spiritual skill of making little decisions that are for good and right and build up your strength for doing the big things. So I wanted to say, look for something substantial, but not something that's a permanent commitment yet. Just a good deed every week if you can. So we won't be meeting for this class again until either the 9th or the 16th of February. So you still got a chance to repeat this exercise. You still got a chance to repeat this exercise. And this is an exercise that you probably ought to get used to doing, so that even after we get done with this class, you still do it at least once a month for the whole rest of your life, until maybe you adopt one of the big projects. That's not an exercise anymore, but is a way of life for you. It is your hobby to support and operate the food bank, to support and operate financial advice for the poor. Linda and I have a friend who's sick. She's been sick for 20 years with lupus. She's reached the point where she cannot manage her financial affairs anymore. She needs a conservator, someone to run her finances for her. The person who's ready to take that on is stepping up from just doing an exercise, like doing a good deed, to adopting a whole project of doing good for someone. I also said about doing this exercise, you don't have to do everything that presents itself. If you're driving down the road and somebody stopped on the side of the road and needs assistance, and it's not an accident where maybe they need immediate medical assistance, just maybe their car won't go, you don't have to stop every time you see someone like that. You can ask yourself, is it my turn to help with this? Maybe 9 times I drive by when someone's like this, but the 10th time, maybe it's my turn. I'm not in a hurry today. I feel like I'm in a hurry, but the truth of the matter is I'm not. This time, today, I'm going to stop and do this good deed and see if I can help them. The concept of checking whether or not it's your turn, and you're the one who has to decide about that, helps, 1, keep it at the level of an exercise, and 2, keeps you from being exhausted with trying to do everything. The whole church should be doing this stuff. The whole church should be doing this stuff, so that no one person has to try to do all of it. But the way we work now as a church, it frequently is the case that a few people in church take on huge projects, while most of us don't do anything much. Ask yourself, is it my turn this time? This friend of Linda and mine, who is sick and has these financial problems, we've taken on a project for her. She has these 3 storage units, and she can't afford them anymore. And she hasn't even looked at the stuff in them for 10 years. Most of it needs to be thrown away. We're going through them, and we're throwing away the stuff and consolidating them into 1 storage unit that will cost her $80 a month, instead of 3 storage units that are costing her more than $400 a month. But when she called and asked Linda to help with her finances, Linda said no. We're helping with the storage units. We're taking care of that. We're getting them cleared out. We talked to Donald at your church. Donald is going to help you find a new apartment or a new room to live in, because you need help to do that, and we live 60 miles away, so it's not convenient for us. It's not our turn to do this, but it is our turn to do that. We're taking care of the storage units. So this is an exercise. Someday it won't be an exercise. Someday you'll take on one of the big projects. But if you don't do some of these exercises first, you won't be ready when it's time to take on one of the big projects. I sometimes think we need in the church, for a lot of our businessmen, when they retire, to take on some projects helping people who need help, who have no skill at business. When they retire, because it's not their turn now, because they're too busy now. I mean, Alan, what do you travel? 100 days a year? About? See, it's not your turn now to do something like this. Sometimes churches need a financial manager. Churches are really amazingly good at being lousy at their finances. Churches frequently don't handle their finances well at all. The fact that it's not your turn now also means it will be someday. It will be someday. And maybe not for this, maybe for that, for a different thing. It all depends upon what God sends you in circumstances and where your heart is inclined. God has written His law in our hearts, and if we're trusting God, then we can trust our own heart to tell us what to do and when it's time for us to do it. So I gave you this assignment to do a good deed every week, 2 if you can. The assignment before that was to pray for people that you're angry at or irritated at. And it sounded like we had a real good time with that exercise. Even if we haven't done this exercise yet, let's gather and talk about it, because we're going to mostly repeat this exercise when you've got 3 weeks coming up in order to work on it. You only have to do 1 of these a week. So we'll help ourselves know how to get ready to be ready to do this. And maybe 3/4 of us have already done it. So, do we have enough for 3 groups? Taiwanese, Mandarin, and English? It looks like we've got Taiwanese and Mandarin.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got enough for 2 groups, Taiwanese and Mandarin, because I'm the only one here who speaks only English. Well, German doesn't count, so I'm the only one here who speaks neither Taiwanese nor Mandarin. So let's split into 2 groups, Taiwanese on this side, Mandarin on that side. Tell about your experiences trying to do a good deed, or if you didn't do this homework, talk about how you would recognize a good deed if it came up in front of you, and what you're going to do to be able to recognize when it's your turn, and what troubles you might have being able to recognize it. Okay? Does that work? Split up, start sharing. So, as I said, it's going to be at least 3 and maybe 4 weeks before this class meets again. This is your chance to catch up on any of your homework. When I post the video for today's class, I will insert the slides in it that give all the assignments that we've had so far, so you can look back, and this is your chance to go back and pick up on any of the exercises you missed, or that you want to do again, or that you need to do again, or need to do for the first time. This business of finding a good deed to do, since that's a once-a-week thing, you might do that and still also practice or step back to one of the others, or carry out the assignment I'm about to give you. In the Sermon on the Mount, we have what are called the Beatitudes right at the beginning. Blessed are you, or how lucky you are, or whatever. One of them says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Now, part of the problem is, what do we mean by righteousness? And I'm not going to go to a lot of trouble to define it. I'm going to use a simple rule of thumb definition, and we'll worry about a better definition later. But righteousness, first and foremost, is what God is like. God does what is right. That's why in English the word righteousness comes from the word right, good, the right thing to do. So those who hunger and thirst for righteousness are those who are desperate that the right thing be done. And there are 2 places. I'm going to divide it into 2 big areas where we're concerned that the right thing be done. And one is when we're concerned that we do the right thing, because we are frequently aware that we didn't do the right thing. And the other is that the right thing be done in the world, because we don't have to look very far around us in the world to see a lot of wrong things being done. But it says here in the scripture, it says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. That means that it isn't there. You're not hungry right after you've had the cake to celebrate the baby that Mandy hadn't had yet. You're not thirsty when you've just had a big glass of water. You're hungry and thirsty when you haven't eaten or you haven't drank, when it's not there. So the exercise for this next period is, oh, and Yogi's not there. Yeah, can I have the next slide? The exercise for this next period is relatively simple. I'm not going to tell you how to be hungry or how to be thirsty. That is very difficult. But we'll do something simple. Choose a notebook or a pad or someplace where you can write, or open a file on your computer or your phone where you can take notes. And every day, at least 4 or 5 days a week, just write down one thing that you ain't got. One right thing that you didn't do or wish you had done, or one right thing that's not happening in the world or that's not going on. That's all. Just write it down. This is an exercise. It starts with small pieces. First, you just write it down. Later, we'll worry about the next step. And the step after that, it's not until the 3rd or 4th step out that we start worrying about how do we fix that. The exercise starts with the first simple step of write it down. Write down something that's right and good and isn't happening. Either that you aren't doing, or that isn't happening in your life, or that isn't happening in the world and should. And over the course of a whole week, there should be some of both in your thing. And don't think that this isn't powerful. You know how people try to diet to lose weight? And how many books are there out there with a different diet to help you lose weight? 23,000 different books with diets in them to lose weight. I'll give you a technique that will make any of them work. Because almost all of them are relatively decent. Yeah, 10 or 20% of them are weird, stupid ideas. But most of them will work if you do this one simple thing. Write down everything you eat. If you write down everything you eat, then when you get to the point where you aren't lying anymore, when you get to the point where you're telling the truth, then the diet book that you're following will start to work. But as long as you're still lying when you write down everything you eat, as long as you're still not telling the truth when you write down everything you're supposed to eat, everything that you actually eat, then whatever diet book you've got, it's not going to work very well. So that's why this will work. Just write it down. That's all you have to do to start. First, we have to build up the hunger and thirst for the right thing to be done. Then when we're hungry and thirsty, it's God's business to fill us up, and God will fill us up with things to do to make things right. But this is a class about exercises, and exercises start with small, bite-sized pieces that we can accomplish, so we get to the place where we can make a choice, exercise our will, and do this so that later we can do more, and then more, and then more again. Let's just have a word of prayer. Lord God, thank you for the opportunities that you give us to do good things for other people. Help us now to watch and listen and see what we are really like and what the world is really like, and tell the truth to ourselves so that we can recognize your righteousness and see where it is not. Amen.
Amen.